think I'm ready to take on uncommon houseplant. Are you sure about that? Yes, I've taken care of pothos and propagated it before. Okay, have you killed a calathea? Everyone kills a calathea. Fair enough. Why don't you try this Monstera Peru? Uh-oh. Oh no, oh no, oh no. What did you do? Nothing. I just looked at it. You know what? Give me that thing back. Stick to spider plant. Aw, seriously? Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. For those who's new, my name is Christian and I love plants. And in today's video, I want to share with you guys 5 uncommon houseplants that are easy to care for and great for beginners or those who's looking at expanding your current collection of plants right now from common to maybe uncommon ones. I do recommend that you must have a bit of plant experience before you do take on some of these houseplants, whether that's about 6 months into your plant journey or about a year into it. Maybe you own a couple pothos right now, or a monstera, snake plant, ZZ plant, or maybe even killed a calathea or two. That still is experience, and you definitely need to have an understanding of your lighting and how that may impact your plant. You have a general idea on potting mixture, how to create more of an airy or well-draining type of mix. And generally speaking, you know when and how to water your houseplants. Now, if you're an absolute beginner, you have never owned a plant before, you've never seen a plant in real life before, I recommend you check out my playlist here. That's where I share a lot of videos on which plants to get if you're an absolute beginner, how to care and repot or propagate a pothos, which will teach you the basic fundamentals on plant care, and many more beginner type of videos. Now, for those of you guys who now have a few plants and you're like eager and want to take on some of these uncommon plants, this video is for you. These 5 houseplants I'm going to share with you guys are relatively uncommon here in my area and location. I live in Toronto, Canada, so you typically won't find them at your big box stores. Now, this may be different for you based on where you live. And generally speaking, they also carry a little bit of a higher price tag. So be mindful of that. And as always, I encourage you guys to buy responsibly. So as I go through each of these plants, I'm going to share with you guys obviously a bit of backstory and how I care for them. So that way you have a general idea on what to expect when you are taking on a bit more of these houseplants. Without further ado, we'll start with the Monstera Stanleyana. So for those of you guys who've owned a Monstera in the past, whether an Adansonii or deliciosa, this is another Monstera variety that is really easy to care for. I love the elongated and narrow leaves it has. The variegation on mine reminds me more of my Thai constellation variegation, more of that cream splash-like style versus more of the blotchy white type of variegation. And this is such a fast-growing plant for me. I got it over the summer, maybe it only had about 4 or 5 leaves. And since then, it's been giving me a leaf like every 2 or 3 weeks, even during the middle of winter. How I care for this plant is I do have it here in the living room, so it does get a lot of that bright indirect south-facing window I do have. Because we are in the middle of winter, I do put it under a grow light for a couple hours or a few hours, especially when the sun goes down, to kind of just extend that daylight hours from what it was used to during the summer. Now, I don't have my humidifier on in the living room, and it does get about 30% humidity level here. So this particular plant doesn't require a lot of high humidity. Makes it easier for those of you guys who may not live in a climate that typically gets high humidity. Now, before heading into winter, I did decide to repot this plant because it was growing a little bit faster. And I want to make sure that the potting medium was a lot airy. So I actually just used equal parts of like potting mix and perlite or pumice if that's what you have. And it's living its best life. I've never had a brown leaf or a brown tip on it or yellowing. And honestly, I water this plant when the soil is about 90% dry to about 100% dry. And you can tell when the soil is a lot more loose and the pot is light. It is a fast drinker, and that's why it's growing so fast as well. So typically for this size, I will probably water it like every 4 or 5 days. And that's because my potting mixture is really airy. So really easy to care for. And again, if you are looking for a different variety of plant, especially if you love monsteras, I recommend a Stanleyana for sure. Now, the next 2 plants are gonna be an epiprenum, and the first one I wanna share with you guys is the Scindapsus Bi Moonlight. So this is a beautiful Scindapsus, and if you've ever owned a common Scindapsus out there, like maybe an exotica, a Pictus exotica, or a silvery Ann, this is a cool variety. I love the silvery blue, gradient tone that the leaves has. And personally for me, Scindapsus are a little bit more of a slower grower than a Stanleyana for sure, but they are really easy to care for. Very similar care to a pothos. So if you own a pothos, you can definitely care for a Scindapsus. And the cool thing about this particular plant now is I'm hearing from a lot of you guys, especially our friends in the US, that it is becoming a little bit more available at your big box store. So definitely keep an eye out for this because it is a beautiful plant. The way I care for this plant is very similar to my Stanleyana. I have it here in my living room. So again, without turning on a humidifier, I get about 30% humidity in the middle of winter. It gets a lot of that bright indirect south-facing light. And I also do put this under a grow light in the evening to just extend that daylight. The potting mixture I have this in is very similar to that of the Stanleyana, except maybe I use more of a potting mix, like 60% and then 40% perlite, just to help retain a bit of that moisture. So that way I'm not constantly watering this plant. But again, very beautiful and very easy to care for. Comment below and let me know if you found a Stanleyana where you're at, because it's so exciting that this is becoming a little bit more available. I know last year everyone wanted this and it was so hard to find. The next plant I want to show you guys is the other Epipremnum. It is actually one of my favorite. It is the, ta-da, the Cebu Blue Pothos. So this is such a cool pothos. It is honestly the fastest growing plant I have ever had. I got this plant around maybe like September, August. I'm gonna insert like an image here of when I first got it, but I got it off a trade and I got it from my friend Natasha, and she gave me a single vine pothos. But since then, I have cut this into 4 vines now, and I even have a few more propagating because, like I said, it's such a fast growing plant. If you've ever owned a pothos before, it's a very similar care to it. Again, lighting will impact the way your plant grows in terms of speed and the size of the leaves. So I do have this here in my living room, so it does get that south-facing indirect bright light. And I also do put this under a grow light, but it's such a beautiful plant. I love the shape of the leaves on this. It's more of that narrow and has a bit of that curve similar to that Scindapsus. But the blue and silver tones to it is so cool. It's not just a traditional like green colored pothos. And then the veins are more of this like fine line to it. It's just such a cool, unique pothos. And I love the fact that it's such a fast growing plant and it's so easy to care for. I did move this up to a bigger pot size because it was growing so fast. And the potting mixture I have this in is about like 60% regular potting mix and about 40% perlite. And again, the way I water this plant is when that soil is almost completely dry. Because pothos can tolerate a bit of underwatering or a bit of overwatering. Even though I try not to risk it, I do water this plant when it's about like 90 to 95% dry. I probably won't let it dry out completely because it is actively growing right now, and you never want to deprive your plant water if it is in active growth mode. So that is how I care for the Cebu Blue. And if you have experienced propagating a pothos before, it's a similar way of propagating this plant. You simply just cut below the node or where that aerial root is, stick it in water, and within a couple of weeks or even a few days, you should start to see that roots grow. And you can even plant that cutting back into the mother plant to create more of a full look. And that's exactly what I did. Again, I started with a single vine, and within like a few months, I now have 4 medium-sized vines, and I'm so happy with this plant. I wish this was a little bit easier to find here in Canada. It is a very hard plant to find right now. I don't know about where you guys are at, if you found a Cebu Blue, but if you do find it at your local big box store and it's a reasonable price, definitely get one because it's so beautiful and so easy to care for. Now, the next plant I want to share with you guys is a philodendron. And for those of you guys who've been following me for a while, you know philodendrons were not the easiest plants for me to care. However, this particular one is probably the least fussiest philodendron I have ever owned. It is it's right here actually, ta-da! The Philodendron Florida Ghost. So first of all, I love the shape of the leaves on this particular plant. And when a new leaf shows up, it starts off more of that pale green or even white color to it. Eventually, it'll turn more into this green shade that you guys see right now. And I do find this to be very low maintenance, drama-free philodendron that I have ever owned. It's so adorable and so cute. The way I care for it is similar to most of my plants that's upstairs. It gets a lot of bright, indirect south-facing light. And I actually do have this in the greenhouse during the winter at the bottom of my shelf. Now, the one thing to keep in mind at the bottom of my shelf of the greenhouse is I actually don't have a fountain in there. And the highest level of humidity it gets is about 40%. This doesn't require high humidity at all. I actually had this outside the greenhouse during the summer months. However, I do only put it in the greenhouse during the winter months because of that grow light. With that said, there are a lot of plants on that bottom shelf, so it is a bit shaded, and that's one of the reasons maybe why this is growing a little slower than what it was doing during the summer months. But nonetheless, very easy to care for. The one thing to keep in mind with philodendrons, personally for me, is you gotta make sure that you're only watering when that soil is 100% dry, and I mean 100% dry. Not like desert dry because you don't want to deprive it of water, but because mine is not actively growing right now, I do gotta be mindful of not overwatering this plant. So I got to make sure that the potting soil and potting mixture is well draining. So equal parts of regular potting mix and equal parts of perlite will do just that. But very, very cool, very adorable. And if you do find this in your big box stores, which I'm hoping this year you will, definitely get yourself a Philodendron Florida Ghost, especially if you're looking at a little bit more uncommon type of philodendrons out there, and that's easy to care for. So yeah, now the last plant I'm going to share with you guys is an Anthurium. It is probably the easiest Anthurium I have. It is the, ta-da, the Anthurium clarinarium. So if you are looking at getting into Anthuriums, but you're afraid to maybe start off with a fussy one, this isn't a fussy one. First of all, I love the way this looks. The heart-shaped leaves, the dark green foliage has a velvety or more like suede feel to it, and then that contrasting white or crystal veins. It's so beautiful. I got this last spring, and you guys can see here it's grown quite a bit. It constantly gives me an inflow and a new leaf. So there's a few reasons why I think this Anthurium clarinarium is one of the easier Anthuriums out there. It's very similar to the Philodendron Florida Ghost. It's very low maintenance and drama-free, to be quite honest. It doesn't require high humidity levels like a Queen Anthurium or even a Regale. I actually had this growing in the summer outside the greenhouse, which gets about like 40% humidity levels in my bedroom, and it was living its best life, constantly putting out a new leaf and even a couple inflows. And also I have this potted up not in sphagnum moss like most of my Aetheriums. It's actually in equal parts of regular potting mix, pumice, perlite, a bit of cocoa husk, and a bit of bark, just to add a bit more of that nice, well-draining type of potting medium. And it's loving it. And the cool thing about this particular plant, it gave me my first little baby Anthurium pup. So it grew out this pup on the side of its roots, and we cut it and we propagated about a few months ago. And since then, it's given me a new leaf. So easy to propagate as well, and it's just so happy and living its best life. Obviously, when it comes to Anthurium, you want to make sure that you are not overwatering it. So I will water my Anthurium clarinarium when it's about like 90% dry, because the potting mix is really well draining with all that perlite and pumice and orchid bark to kind of create a bit of space within the potting soil. But really, really easy to care for Anthurium, and it's so beautiful. It is a little bit more on the expensive side, so again, I do caution you guys about that. But if you are looking at getting your first Anthurium and you want something a little bit easier to start off with, I definitely recommend a clarinarium. So there you guys have it. These are 5 uncommon houseplants that are easy to care for. And like I said, I do recommend you have at least a bit of plant experience or plant care knowledge under your belt before you take on a few of these. But if you are ready to get into more of the uncommon type of plants, these are great ones to start off with because they aren't as fussy or as finicky, and they are also very rewarding when you watch them grow. Now, out of all of these, which is my favorite? I can't pick. Comment below and let me know which one is your favorite. Other than that, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Until the next one, we'll see you guys then. Peace. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hopefully you gave it a thumbs up. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to my channel. If you are looking for more planty content like how to care for your houseplants, click right here.